Welcome to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, where we sit down with the people who give shape, texture, and voice to life on the North Fork of Long Island. Some are rooted here by generations, others arrived by chance or choice, but all carry with them a piece of the story. We talk about what's changing, what's worth holding on to, and the currents of history, both quiet and loud, that run through this place. I'm your host, Christopher Bianchi, and for episode 198, we sit down with Rosemary McKinley, a local author, educator, and historian whose connection to Long Island has shaped a wide-ranging body of work about the East End. Raised in Seacliff, Rosemary's early interest in history carried into her years as a teacher before she eventually turned to writing full-time. Her books include 101 Glimpses of the North Fork and Islands, which captures the region through vintage photographs, and the Wampum Exchange, a novel exploring early encounters between settlers and Native Americans. She also brings history to life through costume, presentations, artifacts, and community programs that make the past accessible and engaging. In our conversation, we talk about her path from teacher to author, what drew her to the North Fork, how the region has evolved, and her more recent book on whaler Henry Green, an important look at a life that adds depth to the maritime history of the East End. So I hope you enjoy episode 198 with Rosemary McKinley. This episode was recorded July 31st, 2025. Thank you so much for coming on the Floyd Memorial Library podcast today. I'm really looking forward to talking to you today.
Yes, I am too.
Thank you. And so in the beginning, I'd like to just start off, if you can give a little overview of your background, where you were born and raised, and even if you want to go back for your ancestry.
Okay, well, my maternal grandfather left the comfortable family home in Manhattan, and he was from Bari, Italy. In 1920, he came to Seacliff, and he started a business there, an ice business. And my mother and her family her brother and her sister were all born in Seacliff. Yes.
That was on what side of the family?
That's my mother's side.
Mother's side?
My mother's side. My father grew up in Manhattan.
Oh, okay. And then you were raised in Seacliff?
Yes. I lived in Seacliff until I was 9, and my parents bought a home a mile away in Glen Cove. Seacliff's an idyllic town, 1 square mile, where you can walk to school, church, local delis, and the library. And of course, the Seacliff Beach, the pavilion, was one whole side of Seacliff. It took it over. So that was Hempstead Harbor. So I was at the beach from a very young age, almost every day in the summer.
And then did you go to high school in Glen Cove?
Oh, okay. I went to Catholic school, St. Boniface, until 8th grade, and then I went to Glen Cove High School.
Okay.
Yes.
And when did you get interested in history? Or was that early on?
Yes. I was an avid reader, I guess from about 11 on, and I was fascinated by history. And I always wanted to be a teacher and learn about life in other eras and around the world. And I also had 2 really special history teachers in high school, and that really spurred my interest. Mm-hmm. I also, when I was a teacher, I spent 2 summers at Columbia's Writing Institute to become a better writing teacher. And I had to learn a new way to teach children, and that actually helped me become a writer. And I had never planned to be, but that every day you're supposed to write something, and you keep a notebook and so on. But it worked for the students I was teaching, and it worked for me.
And you were, before getting into teaching, you went to college for, I was curious, what was...
Oh, I was a social science major and with a minor in teaching, and I earned my teaching certificate.
Okay. And then did you make your way back to Long Island to start teaching in the
Okay.
area?
Well, I got married, and my husband was in the Air Force. We lived in Chanute Air Force Base in Illinois. Very interesting area. And I was offered a job teaching there the day we had to leave.
Mm.
It always happens, right? So when I came back to Long Island, I substituted, but it took me a while, and we started to have a family, and I actually earned a part-time teaching job for 14 years while my kids were growing up. It worked. It worked.
And how long did you end up you taught mostly as a history teacher?
Yes. So I taught around 20 years.
Okay.
And some of the time it wasn't credited with New York State because I taught in a Catholic school the first year. It just about no, I'm saying it was 30 years.
Oh,
I
30.
taught about 30 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
Not full time,
okay.
but it added up to 30 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
But even while you were teaching, were you always interested in becoming a writer?
No, that's the funny part. I always wanted to be a history teacher, and when I went to Columbia to learn how to teach writing, I still didn't want to become a writing teacher. But in 2001, my mother passed away, and I began to consider leaving teaching. And because I learned how to write through writing workshop, I started writing, and I said, I want to be I want to be a published author, which is not an easy task.
Yes.
It's not.
No. And at the same time, while you were still teaching, did you ever come out to the North Fork?
That's a great story. So I'm a Long Islander, and I had never been to the North Fork. We had been to the South Fork, just driving through. And I was reading about everything about the North Fork in Newsday. Periodically, there would be an article. And I said, gee, it's more like upstate. It's very quiet. And I talked my husband into just visiting. So we came out one day in October, and we looked around, and I just kept thinking, this was 1994. I kept thinking we could afford something here, but it would be very small, but there was a lot more land attached to every house. So January of 95, we started to come out and look for a house. And I kept promoting. I said to my husband, if you don't like it, we'll buy something. If you don't like it, in 3 years, we'll sell it. Well, he never wanted to stay in Nassau County on the weekends again. He loved it out here.
Yes.
We didn't have to worry about that.
And did you start writing more when you got out here later in 2000?
After I retired, I started writing every day I wrote something. That's what I learned at Columbia. And I didn't even know how to send anything via the internet. I had to write letters and then make copies. So I started sending, submitting, and that was 2003. And about once a year, I would receive, mostly rejections, but once a year I'd receive an acceptance, and that kept me going. And then I believe it was 2010. This is a great story, but it's true. I sent a story I had written to History Press, and an editor picked it up, and she wrote me the nicest rejection letter I ever had. We really enjoy reading this, but we don't publish we don't publish fiction. And I thought, oh, okay, that's nice. And the next day she offered me she offered me a job writing this book, 101 Glimpses of the North Fork and Islands. And I was so excited. And I did not know how to I didn't know how to do I had to put 100 pictures on a disc. I didn't know how to do any of that. But I thought, if I say no, I'll never get this opportunity again. So I enlisted the help of people who know what they're doing. But I did all the writing, and that I know I could do. So it was very exciting to be asked to write something for a publication.
Yes. And were you coming out here over time?
Oh, we came out every weekend in the summer.
Okay.
And in the spring, we would come periodically, and in the fall, we would come. And the house that we bought needed a lot of work. So that was another reason we were coming out. But we went right to the beach, even if it was for an hour, because that's one of the reasons we came out here.
And then were you starting to get interested in the history out here on the North Fork? Yeah.
What happened was when I started writing about different eras. The first book is mostly 100 years ago, pictures from 100 years ago, and I started researching. And what's interesting is the story for the Wampum Exchange came to me while I was writing the first book, and I started writing down my just ideas about a young person when South Hole began, because I started researching, and the Native American influence, that was very important. So I started doing that research, and after the first book was published, I started writing the second book.
And could you talk a little bit about, even since you've been out here, how has the region changed from even the 90s and 2000s to even today?
Yeah, it's changed a lot. So when we first came out here, there was lots of open land. Even in our community, there were lots of lots, without homes on them. And it was pretty quiet. Even in the summer, it wasn't so packed like it was in Nassau County where I grew up. And over the time, we've seen a lot more building and interest. When we would go to restaurants 30 years ago, it was very reasonable, not packed, and of course that's changing.
Yes.
So we've seen it, but I still think, because I love this area so much, I still believe that we can, if our leaders accommodate people who want to keep that same feeling, I think we can still bridge that gap of being historically secure and making sure that our history remains the way it is, so that we can teach others and still have development. It's a difficult balance. I do believe that. And yes. I've been to many of the town talks about this, and I think people are trying to balance it, but it's really the developers. I don't think they're thinking that.
They're seeing open space.
Yeah, and,
but
it's
tough.
It is tough, and the developers keep saying that the traffic isn't going to hurt us, but we only have two roads coming in.
And they're already...
And they're only 2 lanes each. It's not like we have a highway, which I don't want.
No.
So I don't know how it,
Yeah.
I don't know how it can't change. But I do know I avoid town in the summer. I go shopping early, and then we're at the beach.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
But it is a beautiful place.
Yes. And now, to get back to your first book, 101 Glimpses of the North Fork and Islands, it offers a glimpse, as you said, into the past through vintage photos. Can you share a favorite story or image from that collection?
Well, actually, my favorite picture they wouldn't put. Oh, okay, it's on page 25.
Okay.
I love the fact that little boys loved, and I believe there's just 3 children there, and they love being at the beach. And they're standing there in their the 20s bathing suits. That is my favorite picture because kids they just love being free. It's almost like you're free here. My grandchildren love coming here, and they all learned how to swim. We have a small boat, and they like to tube, ski, water ski. So I think that epitomizes why people love being out here.
And then also you mentioned while you were writing that book, your novel, The Wampum Exchange, you started to explore that, which does explore early interactions between settlers and Native Americans. Can you talk a little bit more about that book and why that was important?
Sure. After I was a history teacher, I taught 6th graders. So I thought that this book would appeal to adults, but children more so, because it takes you through the life of a settler's son who has a chance meeting with a Native American, a Korchog boy. And I wanted to show, because I did do the research, I wanted to show that when Southold began, this whole area, when it was starting to be settled, the Native Americans and the settlers got along. And I wanted to show that. And the 3 sisters, which is on the cover, we learned how to grow corn, squash, and beans from the Native Americans. And I wanted to show that because that, to me, is very, very important.
Yes.
So there was a give and take. I wanted to show. But I also, when I studied how people lived back then, and I learned the Native Americans believed that land was for everyone. You don't own it. And of course, the European way was that you come in and you own your plot of land. And that didn't work out later on.
Yes.
That didn't, it just didn't work.
Yeah.
But in 1650, when I set the book, the time frame, the Native Americans, Korchogs, they did get along with the local settlers. So I wanted to show that. I thought that was important. And it was important to show how the Korchogs lived and how the settlers lived, to show the contrasts.
Yes.
I wanted to show that. Being a teacher who taught history, I wanted to show that.
Yes, definitely. And also, as now a local writer and historian, what do you think is the most underappreciated aspect of Southold's history?
Well, a lot of has been said lately, and about ignoring our Native American history and our slave history, and I believe that is coming out. A lot of that history is coming forward.
Yes.
Which is good, which is very good. And when I was doing the research, that's what's interesting. It was very difficult to find that. In fact, I found a book. It's all about the Black history in Greenport. There's a book. It's one of these
the history press.
Yeah, one of the history press books, and it was very interesting because that it's a history that we haven't heard much about, but it is coming to the fore, and I think that's very important. And then Native American history also.
Yes, definitely.
But I know you. This is a little crazy, but when I was in high school, I still remember my history teacher saying that in the North, there were people who had slaves, but they only had maybe one or two.
Mm.
I still remember that because a lot of people did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
In the South, we think of the huge plantations,
Mm-hmm.
and that's definitely true. And of course, not everybody owned a slave in the North.
Yes. But it's like it still was going on.
Yes.
But we think more of just the South.
Because we think in terms of large plantations, because that's
Yes.
what we learned.
Yes.
But that came out when I was doing the research. And I remember that's in the 60s. I remember my teacher saying that.
Yes.
It's interesting to note.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also, you've been involved in community and engagement, often presenting even at the Southold Historical Museum. How did you get involved in that, and what's been some of your more memorable experiences in sharing history in the public?
Well, I've always been interested in history. So when I came out here as a homeowner, I was, in the very beginning, I had no idea that Southold was one of the earliest settlements in New York State. I did not know that. So I started reading a lot about the early history. And I mean, there are plaques around the town, and I started reading those because, you sort of just drive by. But I found it fascinating that where we walk every day, there are people, who lived there from 1640. And I also found, when I was doing my research, that the Dutch were here earlier. They didn't get credit because they didn't settle here.
Okay.
I learned all this just by doing the research, not because anybody wrote that down.
Yes.
And that was, they were looking for pitch, which is what you put when you're building homes. You put that in between the planks of wood to keep out the cold or the heat. See, I didn't know any of that. I learned all that. But I'm not building any house like that. not now. But it was interesting. And that's why in the Wampum Exchange I have a little mystery about the Dutch.
Okay.
A little bit of a history of a mystery. I had to throw them in
somewhere. But then you've given talks at different organizations and volunteer at the Southold.
Yeah, I'm a docent at the Southold Historical Museum Complex. At times, I'm there during the year. We also have the elementary school children come, and we have programs for them, which is wonderful. They learn about the area and they learn specifically how people lived, which I think is a wonderful thing here.
Yeah.
So I'm involved with that. I've also written some very short pieces, and it's on the historical Southold Historical website. We have a lot of writers who submit for that, so that people can learn a little more about, all different times in our history here. But I do find it fascinating that we go back so far.
Yes.
And when I know some of the homes that were here in 1640, and in fact, I stopped one day at a yard sale, and the owner she gave me a tour of the house because I told her I wrote a book about her. There's a short history about her house, so she let me come in and see the house. I was delighted.
No, it's always, I think there's so much you can kind of dive into, but your third book, you completed a book about a whaler named Henry Green. Can you tell us about that project and why that was important?
Sure. I was giving a book talk about the Wampum Exchange, and one of the women in the group said, she mentioned that she came across, at the Horton Point Lighthouse, we have a display about Henry Green. a whaler in the 1600s who was from Sag Harbor, but he ended up living on not far from me on 25, and they called it Blubber Row because there were lots of former sea captains who lived there. I found that's also fascinating. So I wasn't really interested, and then I started looking up Henry, and I found his life was pretty interesting. So I started doing research. I even went to Sag Harbor. I wanted to walk on the street where he lived, and that's the other funny story. In the early 1800s, they didn't have numbers on houses. I guess there were so few. So 3 different people told me that 3 different houses were Henry Green's house. So obviously we don't know for sure. But there are sea captains' homes on this one street, and they're fairly small, and they had a lot of kids, by the way. But people just, that's how they lived. And he was a fascinating character, Henry Green, because he came from I wouldn't say a poor family, but he came from a family that fished. They weren't wealthy. And a number of his brothers all became sea captains, because I think it's easy to say that in the 1800s in Sag Harbor, the whole village was involved with whaling, whether it was building ships or providing everything they needed to go on the ships, people coming in from other areas and they needed lodgings, that kind of stuff. So when he went off to sea, he was a sea captain for over 20 years, but he came back after almost a year, or a little over a year. He came back to Sag Harbor, and some sea captains never came back, and some ended up on the seas for like 4 years. So it must have been a difficult life. Sounds like a difficult life to me.
Yes.
But he always came back, and he did very well. Henry Green did very well as a sea captain. And they called them joint ventures. So it was pretty expensive to buy a ship and provide all the provisions you need, and of course you paid the whalers according to their responsibility. So as a captain, you would when you came back, if you came back, you would make the most money. But if they didn't catch enough whales and they didn't have enough whale oil, you may not receive anything. And as you went down the line, a lot of the whalers, they made very little money, but that's, they obviously were adventurous, because you had to be on a ship for a year. Wasn't a luxury ship. So I learned a lot about whaling, and Henry, and that's the other reason I was interested in him. So he ended up living in Southold and becoming a dairy farmer with one of his sons. It's just, he also went to, so let me go back a little bit. So it seems to me that the whalers were very adventurous people, men. They just, they wanted challenges. So when whaling was dying down, when petroleum was discovered, Henry piloted this huge ship of whalers to go and find gold in California. I just, when I read that, I couldn't believe it. But that shows how adventurous they were. And the ship was an old ship, and when they did get to California, it just was it was a bust. People died. A lot of the sea captains died. It just, from dysentery, they weren't used to being up in the mountains looking for gold. And so Henry came back without his ship because it was old and it had to be dismantled. And that whole story is just, to me, is just, it shows how what courage they had. Like something like 13 sea captains wanted Henry to be the captain of that ship. So that shows something about him too.
You felt that was important to try to put something like that into, I mean, it's a historical narrative of the region as well.
Yeah, it's fiction.
It's fiction, yeah.
Like I said, I base everything on facts, but this, and in fact, in one of my talks, I was questioned about what his wife was saying to him, Rosanna. And I said, this is fiction. You know, I don't know what she said to him, but I could guess. Like,
yes.
Will you stay home? No, just. But I also found in researching, in Sag Harbor, I forget the name of the library there.
Oh, John Germain.
Yes, that you have to put. I had no idea how the families lived while the sea captains were at sea, and it doesn't say that anywhere. So I went, when I was in that library, I saw the census, and in the census it told me that the wives would they would invite other sea captains' families to live with them while they were away, because they had no money except from former trips. And they took in a lot of sewing. The boys went and they would fish a lot, so they had food, and they had gardens where they grew what they needed. They didn't really have an income, which I had no idea until I looked that up. And that was in the census, putting 2 and 2 together.
Yes.
So that's all part of the research that I find interesting.
And looking forward, are you working on any other books?
Good question. It took me 3 years to write Captain Henry Green story. So I've been writing short stories. And they've actually been selling to people in Japan. I have no idea why. I'm happy. Yeah. And when I look up the inventories, it's in Japanese. So I don't know who's buying them. Yeah. But I've been writing short stories. I have on Draft 2 Digital. I'm learning how to place everything online. So I've been selling a lot of short stories. And one is based in Seacliff when I was a kid, and then I've been selling a lot of short stories. But and I've been writing. I have a series I'm writing. I don't usually write romance stories, but this is about a woman who lives in a place like Southold, and she's an older woman. Oh, she was a librarian, retired. So I have 3 stories about her. So that's my next series.
Nice.
Yeah, and when they say to write about what you know, so that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. And just looking back from even being a teacher and then an author today, what do you hope people take away from your work, especially when it comes to understanding the past and its connection today?
You know, as a teacher, I always aimed at giving kids in my classroom a better understanding of history, not just facts. So I would write, and I didn't even realize it. I was writing stories, historical stories, when I was teaching, because I wanted it to be interesting. Because a lot of people say history's boring, and especially high school kids. So I started writing more narratives, and they liked it. And the 6th grade kids, they were much easier to draw in, because I would bring in how kids lived at the time also. So that was important to me and it still is. I think my writing should be informative and entertaining at the same time. I think that's important. That's really a goal, and I think I do aim to do that all the time.
Mm-hmm. And also just being out here now, we talked a little bit about how the region has changed, but what are your hopes for the future of the North Fork and its community down the line?
So this is really important to me.
Mm-hmm.
My husband and I were so impressed with the quiet and openness of this area in 1995. It's been said that we're the last holdout of that life on Long Island. I would hate to see overdevelopment erase the natural beauty of this envious place. And I really think it's important to, I think you can bridge the gap, and it doesn't have to be all one way or another. But you do have to work to preserve what we have.
Yes.
Because you don't want to see it overdeveloped.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very important.
Yeah.
There's so much beauty here.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of Long Island has been overdeveloped, more western.
Right.
So it's kind of one of the last areas.
We are.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I drive on the North Road, of course I call it the North Road.
Yeah.
You see all these open fields. I love seeing that.
Mm-hmm.
And on 25, it's still a beautiful place, and I hope that we can keep it as much as we can.
Yes, definitely. And I think we covered everything. Was there any last minute things you'd like to say or discuss that we haven't talked about?
Just this one line.
Sure.
Southold provides a glimpse into what Long Island was like years ago. Open farmland, pristine beaches, natural flora and fauna, and people who have lived here do appreciate that aspect of it. And I think more and more people are learning more about this area.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I think that's important, very important.
Yes. Yeah, especially for people that, whether they're in the city or they have grown up more further west, they might not know what it was really like
Right.
throughout the rest of the region here. So
right. I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know until I started coming here and I started seeing how beautiful everything was and learning a little bit more about the background and how important it is to preserve a lot of it.
Yes. No, but I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast today and share your story and some of the wonderful stories you've written about the region and your passion for history out here. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. And my books are available.
Yes. They can be found on Amazon.
And on Draft 2 Digital. They're on that too. And they're found locally in the stores around here.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, I hope you enjoyed episode 198 with Rosemary McKinley. I want to thank you for listening to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, and we'll see you next time.